it's just gotten so out of hand, and conversations don't happen anymore.
Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, where we help and assist people into exploding into their lives through our concept of full impact mindfulness. The only entrance requirement is the honesty, open-mindedness, and a willingness to try. And if you have a few pixie dust sprinkles of those, welcome aboard. My name is Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and as for those faithful watchers of this and listeners to this podcast, you know that we offer an eclectic roster of guests. And today I'm privileged and pleased to have my dear friend, Missy Sorg, on the show. And although at sometimes we're on opposite sides of the football field, mainly we agree in our friendship and our concern for each other. Missy, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Yes. So to preface this, a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, I received an email from you talking about wanting to come back on the show and talking about how to deal with political differences. And when I read this, I said, I'm dealing with a friend of mine who has a bruised and hurt heart.
That is true. That is a fair estimate. We talked before about some stuff, and I think we were talking around the holidays and, differing opinions with regard to that. And at the time, I'm the same person that I was then. And I didn't necessarily want to out myself politically because, especially in today's spectrum of things, it can be it can be very problematic. It can be, I've lost friendships. I've lost connections with people. And so I wanted to come on and I wanted to talk about some things that when you and I talked before, you were talking about ice cream. And, you were talking about how I think you gave the example that I like chocolate ice cream, you like vanilla ice cream. And, we're never going to decide that we like the same thing. And I broke it down and was like, Jim, wait, we both like ice cream. And I remember that you were just blown away by that conception of it.
Easily done.
But it's just one of those things that I think, especially politically, a lot of people don't realize that there is somewhere that we all have some sort of bridging point that we can come together on. And it's become so extremist at this point that that's part of the problem. The only loud voices that we're hearing are on either end of the spectrum. And I tell people all the time, it's like a bell curve. So the bell curve comes up in the middle, and that's where the majority of the country is. And the voices that we're hearing right now are these very loud, fringe minority portions of things. For that, it's going to be the MAGA contingent primarily on the Republican side of things. And it's going to be the Democratic Socialists on the Democrat side of things. And those are the two voices that we're hearing from that are polarizing and isolating a lot of people within that bell curve. And you and I have talked a little bit about things, and I think that we're both kind of in that bell curve, in that middle part.
Well, I think that everybody that has listened to this show, my feelings tend, if you've listened to our podcast about Jesus the socialist, and that I consider Jesus the king of woke and the architect of socialism. But socialism is not a terrible thing. It is not communism. But for people who, it's having contempt prior to investigation. I mean, I have views, but they're not out of bounds. I'm not on the street screaming and yelling all of these type of things. And what happens is people have contempt prior to investigation. Missy has her views and people base their contempt without having an investigation. They don't check the facts.
That's true. And nowadays, with all of the instantaneous content, it used to be that news journalists would investigate the news. Now they're trying to break a story without having maybe all of the information behind it. And what do you determine is accurate versus what's false? You also have the situation where it's notorious that the news story comes out on the front page, top of the fold. For those of you that are younger, that's a newspaper, the print newspaper. That's kind of what that is. That it would come out front page above the fold, and if there was a correction, it would be buried in the second section of the newspapers, not even the first section, buried in the bottom page of the editorial section, for instance. So not everybody's going to be reading that part of it versus what they were reading on the front part of it. And I think that with social media, and as a social media manager, I love to say this to people because I think that that's where part of the problem is people just put everything on social media these days, and they don't investigate. They just, well, I like this person, I follow this person online, and if they're saying it, then it's got to be true.
Well, and again, what we talk about quite often is in the 12-step world, we say it's our singleness of purpose that bind us together. And I think the United States, the citizens of the United States have lost their singleness of purpose.
I can agree with that.
What's the mission statement here?
That's a really good question. I know that for me, I'm a patriotic person. And because of my patriotism, I'm not out there, waving a huge American flag, but I'm not saying that I wouldn't be somebody out there waving a huge American flag. But I think that it's come down to people see the American flag no longer as a symbol of America, as our country. They see it as a sign of MAGA. And that's the problem that I have with things, is that the message has gotten completely erased.
It most certainly has. It's been weaponized, and patriotism does not mean obedience. And according to my thoughts, anyway, and you can correct me if I'm usually wrong, is that we have the leader that demands obedience, praise, and admiration. That's not patriotism to me. It's a love of your country and liberty and justice for all, and ensuring the rights for everyone, every citizen.
I appreciate that you prefaced that with every citizen, because that's part of the problem that I have with things right now. I'm all about helping people, especially those in need. But like one of the biggest problems that we have right now that's a polar divisive is the word ICE. I view ICE as part of the border security. They are going through, and they're working under their their job description on things. I do think that there's some reform that could be done there, but at the end of the day, I do feel that border security is important.
Well, border security is certainly important, but what do you say to the people who point out that these ICE people, they call them goons, and they call a lot of MAGA people goons, which is unfair, that they operate as secret police and take people off the streets, deny them rights, and wear masks?
Well, I'm going to ask a question as far as the masks are concerned. Knowing the anger and the hatred that's going on toward these people, if you were if you were a member of ICE, would you want people to see your face and know your name or be able to find your name? Because that puts a target not only on them, but their families. So that's kind of where I am with it. I don't necessarily agree with the under the the darkness of night type of situation. But I do believe that the jobs that they're doing is beneficial.
So the job of law enforcement is helpful to everyone to protect and serve. But there's sometimes I think it becomes a little bit weaponized. And do I think that all these people should be taken off the streets? No. No, not at all.
Okay, why is that?
No, I mean,
No,
no,
no, okay.
I mean the ICE people, they shouldn't
Oh,
be
thank you.
taken
Okay,
off the
okay, okay.
streets. No, no.
See, we're having a conversation, Jim. We're getting to understand each other.
Yes.
So here's my take on things. So locally here in Pittsburgh, there was an Oakmont man who was detained by ICE. And the community was in an uproar. It was all over the news media. And when it came down to it, it was reported by the news media before all of the facts were there. Because it was put out that, this is a husband, this is a father, his child is sick, you're taking him away from his family, but nobody did their homework to figure out why he would have
Well,
been on the ICE list.
it was the Oakmont Bakery, and the owner of the Oakmont Bakery, who was an innocent victim in all this, was being persecuted in the media and the local community, thinking that he turned this guy in,
N-
which
And,
was untrue.
and that's part of the other problem with it is people jump to conclusions without doing
Contempt prior to investigation,
exactly.
basing their choices on beliefs and not facts.
Absolutely. And
And if they knew the facts that I know about you, I can't imagine that anybody would walk away from you.
well, I appreciate that. I really do.
No, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't the truth.
No, and I understand that. And again, you and I have completely differing views on a lot of different things, but we also have similar views when it comes down to like we're having this very natural conversation. We're not yelling, we're not screaming. My husband is a Democrat, so he and I are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. We both respect each other. So I work with him every Thursday, well, not every Thursday night, but Thursday nights, and I work with him in a lot of regards with an LGBTQ plus oriented wrestling company.
Sure.
A lot of these kids don't know where I stand politically because I don't talk about it openly. I like to refer to my Republican friends that we need to repurpose like the scarlet letter, and it's like a crimson R instead of a scarlet A for adultery.
So let's talk about the demonization of Republicans as a group, a generalization. And for those of you who do not know, of course, I'm a lifelong Democrat. However, when Bill Clinton ran for president, I found his lack of integrity, honesty, and the ability to tell the truth in his self-centeredness so abhorrent that in the primary, I voted for Ross Perot for president. And when he ran for president of the United States in the general election, I voted for George H. Bush.
I've voted for Democrats before, are not at the presidential level, but locally, I voted for Bill Peduto, his first term. I'm one of those voters that I do my homework on things, but especially in this, again, polarized sort of situation, I feel that Republican candidates represent me most. Does that mean that I love everything that Donald Trump does? Absolutely not. And if you, my philosophy on that is if you agree with somebody 100% of the time, that's not right. That's not normal. There's something wrong with that. I don't agree with my husband 100% of the time, and he'll be the first one to tell you that. But we respect each other's differences, and we've been married now for over 20 years. And politics didn't really become much of an issue with us until recently. And even that, like, it's not a huge issue. We're obviously still married. I like to think we're happily married. He's not paying any attention to me right now to confirm or deny that. That looks as he's confirming that. But that's the thing is that it's just gotten so out of hand, and conversations don't happen anymore.
Spirituality is a personal connection with something. And I thought, how could we possibly contribute more to people's lives like we're doing on the show? And as a result, I've made the choice to become an ordained minister. And as so, I am legally authorized to perform marriages in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Why choose our services over an established mansion of wood and stone, what we do is we offer a non-religious, spiritual-based, mindfulness-based type of bonding of two souls. We are based in the Pittsburgh area, however, am willing to travel and am open to any type of suggestions that would suit you and yours. Our goal is to make this day as easy as possible for both of you and have no worries. Let us handle the ceremony. Please contact the show for our rates and whatever we can possibly do to make that moment in time special for you and to create memories. So, and again, for viewers of the show, they know that I am firmly entrenched in the 12-step world and use a lot of 12-step lingo, which is about having a change in your thoughts and actions. And what we talk about is getting out of the problem and getting into the solution. So why are people focused so much on the problem, and they think that you as a Republican are the problem, and they think of me as what I am as the problem? Well, who's talking about solutions?
That's a really good question, because anybody will get up on their soapbox and just point out the problem. And it's few people that look at it and say, here's a solution to it. And when I contacted you about doing today's episode, it was with that in mind. Again, we talked before, and anybody who follows the breadcrumbs from that previous one could probably figure out we were talking about politics and that I was a Republican. But getting into the nitty-gritty of it, I reached out to you because there are big ticket issues that we're not having enough conversation about, I don't think, as a society. We have gun control, we have immigration, we have abortion, we have, border security, we have taxation, we have, you name it, there's a bunch of different things that people will definitely give you their opinion about no matter what. Me as a Republican, I have been speaking out with regard to things like abortion. Here's my stance on abortion. And, you can like it, you can hate it, whatever. But I think
we can respect it.
Exactly. And I think that there's a middle ground for it. So my background and my history for the audience here, I've gone through fertility treatments because I was, we had a problem conceiving, and 2 years I was going through fertility treatments. That was hormonal therapy. It was everything up to IVF, because my insurance at the time would not cover IVF. So I did all sorts of hormonal therapy. I did all sorts of, I was poked and prodded more times than I would like to even remember at that point. So the topic of abortion for me is personal, because women get pregnant and just decide to, I don't want this. There we go. With that in mind, I do believe that abortion should be an option under certain circumstances. My personal, and I'm not saying that this is endorsed at all by the Republican Party, and myself, I've been trying to talk to Republican leadership to tell them that we need to have conversations about this. We absolutely must be, because right now here in Pennsylvania, we have 24 weeks for that's our cutoff for abortion. How many months is 24 weeks? 24 weeks is 5.5 months. How long is a pregnancy? That's 9 months. So you're more than halfway through a pregnancy by the time that you would get to the point where Pennsylvania says, no, we're not going to allow abortion unless it fits under certain parameters. I do feel that in circumstances of rape and incest, that should be left solely to the mother to decide.
So let's stop right there.
Okay.
When you say solely to the mother to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think as a female, and we've talked on this show before about one of the most disrespectful things a human being can say to another is, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
So that's impossible.
Yeah.
So how do you as a female, knowing that all these decisions are being made by rich white men, old white men,
You and I were talking before the show about this. So here's my favorite thing about all of this decision making. There are more studies in medicine done with regard to male erectile dysfunction than there are for female issues that can be problematic. For instance, endometriosis is something that a lot of women experience, but there's not a whole lot of research and data and study done on it. And pretty much you go to the gynecologist, you're diagnosed, and they're like, well, we can do this or we can do this. And, good luck. But, sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus over here. Not that he does, but if he were to have ED issues, he could get a prescription over the phone without even seeing a doctor. That easy. And yet, if I'm going to do anything, I have to go in and I have to have, full workup before they'll even consider anything with it. Tubal ligation. If a woman wants to get her tubes tied, she is asked, are you sure you want to do this? Because, you might want to get pregnant later on and it might be a problem. Okay. Let me ask you this question with regard to the abortion issue, and this will kind of get to what you're talking about. So, if a man gets a woman pregnant, can he get her pregnant again within the next 10 to 12 months?
Yes.
If she's pregnant already. So, a man can get a woman pregnant. She's now pregnant. She can't get pregnant again until...
Correct.
Okay, so there's the 9-month gestation period plus a little bit after that that her hormones are regulating again before she can get pregnant again. So you take that, the 9 months, which is actually 10 months from conception, when you do the math on things, that it works out to that. So a man can get pregnant within that period, but a woman can't get pregnant again within that period. In this point in time, this man can also go out and get however many other women pregnant.
Yes, he can.
Why is birth control always pressured on the woman?
I have no answers for that at all.
If a man goes in for a vasectomy, he undergoes, at the very least, twilight anesthetic. So he's kind of put under. Yet, a woman goes in for a regular gynecological exam, and they scrape a part of her cervix to test for cancer.
Yes.
And we do that without any sort of medicine or pain relief or anything like that. So that kind of shows the disparity with regard to how men versus women are treated in this circumstance.
Absolutely. Well, we're all aware, as a therapist dealing with females, I have some patients who tell me that they only have one good week a month. And quite often they tell me, you're the first one that ever asked me about this.
And that's just it. And you're not a medical doctor.
No, but I deal with thoughts and feelings and moods.
And that's important. And I appreciate that aspect of things. So, again, as a society, why are we putting so much in charge with men at the helm versus women who, it's our bodies?
I love what you're saying. I follow you 100%. This is 2026. It was only 100 years ago that women got the right to vote.
Yeah.
It was in the 1970s, women still couldn't own a home. Women couldn't open a credit card without their husband's permission.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna toss back to that. Do you know which party helped to get women to vote?
Oh, I'm sure you'll tell me.
It was Republicans.
Okay. And again, I have no problem with Republicans. None.
Exactly.
Zero.
And this is the thing that I'm saying is that, you're perfectly fine and accepting of that. Other people argue with me about it if I were to say that. I'm like, no, actually go back and look at your history books. It was Republicans that were kind of championed behind that. It was Republicans that championed, to end slavery.
Yes.
And this is the parts of history.
Yes.
These are the parts of history that people just kind of gloss over and forget that Republicans helped to do this stuff. So, when they talk down to me and say that you're a garbage human being, I'm like, Really, I'm not. You're painting me with a very, very broad paintbrush.
And again, we have to differentiate between Republicans and MAGA. We have to do that. But they paint you just with a general brush.
Yeah, and
That's absolutely, completely
it's
disgusting.
it's crazy.
We'll be back to continue this conversation on our next podcast. And as always, a free prescription: fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste, my friends.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.